Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Combat Connection Daycast podcast. You're here with Luca, Low, and Beast King, and today we're going to be discussing the myth, the fabled, the legendary, the Kumite.
Did you say Kumite?
Uh-huh, the Kumite.
What's a Kumite? The Kumite is a mythical invitation-only martial arts tournament with the deadliest fighters in the world.
No, not the Boondocks or the Frank Dukes movie type bullshit. We're going to be talking about Kumite, Randori, Sanda, free fighting, sparring. We are going to be discussing tips, tricks, and our own ways of fighting that we use when we spar. Now, we'll spar semi-regularly, or we're all meant to. I have not been because of COVID, because restrictions are a bitch until recently where we've been okay with it. And I got to do some sparring for my grading, which was wonderful, honestly. But in terms of like actual styles, all of our styles spar semi-regularly, I'd say. And we'll have experience within sparring and sparring outside of our class, outside of our own styles. So we're going to talk about how we fight, what's some of our preferences and things we enjoy doing. Let's start us off with Beast King. You've trained in two combat sport focused martial arts, Muay Thai and Sanda, both of which their whole focus is sparring for their competition fighting. What's some good ways you enjoy fighting, mixing the two styles, or just tips you've learned from a single style that you enjoy using to be a better fighter?
More or less. I don't think I have any specific tips or tricks, more so just the way in which I usually go about things is more or less from an outboxing stance of things. I mean, I more or less just try and stick to the outside, see what openings open up. I mean, usually even really good fighters make mistakes, or you can find some form of opening. So I usually try and hang back a little bit, find out where I can get in, and once I am able to close that distance and get in there, more or less just wreak havoc with that. Though I will say, I guess this is kind of a tip. Don't be afraid to get hit if it means giving a hit. I mean, obviously don't keep taking head kicks if you can avoid it and, moves that will actually, impact your career as a martial artist and impact your time you can spend doing martial arts. But if you can, if you got to take that fucking cross, if it means lining up a really good shot for a roundhouse or, something like that, it is full of risk, Martial arts are full of risk. So don't be afraid to take that hit if it means giving them a good one right back. Yeah. Personally, though, I guess if I had to think of any techniques, I'd say that are more or less, special in a sense that I like to work in there. I'd say probably things like backfist and long arm swings, really. I mean, they're not really something I'd suggest doing really all too often if you don't really have a lot of practice with them, because those are one of the few swings where, you more or less don't have a lot of control over the force that goes into it and what you output. I mean, even if you are trying to more or less hold back, if it lands, it will hurt regardless of the fact. So, you got to definitely know who you're sparring with, know, what their limitations are and whether they can take it or not before, from long arms and swings and things like long arm swings or with hands and that type of deal. But, I mean, I personally find them pretty enjoyable. Just as a move, they're really fun to do, and I enjoyed spending the time I did to try and get the hang of them. I mean, I'm not anywhere near close to being super good with them, but they're a fun technique, I think. They're very much a kung fu technique. I mean, you see them almost always in every type of major kung fu film, all the way back to, just like the Shaw Brothers and things like that. Like the long arm swing is more or less just a staple attack. It's just more so, I think the hard part that comes along with it isn't just the power management, but like in addition to that, it does leave you open on a side until you can, bring that hand back up, which takes a little bit of energy on your part. So yeah.
So you'd say your style is like maybe somewhat of a tanking style where you'll take the hits in order to deliver something harder, and you try to get within your enemy's space to land your heavier attacks.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly stick to the outside and do a lot of circling, a lot of zigging and zagging in and outwards.
Okay,
That being
so it
said,
may
I'm
be
not
more
a
so like a.
If I had to, yeah, I was gonna say if I had to compare it to anything, Sisu always says that when it comes to like our sanda, we always try and keep it more so like fencing than anything else. I mean, we do have guys who are bulkier than I am, but I mean, the way I always kind of view it is more or less this: I'm not going to take a hit if I can avoid it, but if I know, hey, if I just tank this, you know, and am able to follow up really quickly, then I'll do it because I mean I have a significant weight advantage over a lot of the people I was training with at the time. There was really only one person, like one or two people I'd say in that gym who were close to me weight wise where I wouldn't do that with, but it just really depends. But for the most part, yeah, I'd say I'm more into the whole fencing style outboxing type deal. I love setting things up with the jabs, getting in there, jabbing them up, falling in with a cross, just seeing where I can test them at, testing the shield.
Nice. Okay, moving on to low. Let's go. I asked you kind of a broad question, Beast, but going off of the answer you gave and where you specified, let's go low. How would you define your fighting style? How is it influenced by the styles that you've done? What signifies low fighting, and where does it all come from?
Being as unorthodox as humanly possible. That's really the epitome of what I do.
That's
It's like
actually fair based on a lot of what you told me.
Yeah.
It's like I'll have these students who will sit here and they'll talk to me. They're like, "Yeah, you sit here and you're teaching us standard boxing, Muay Thai Ladrit, Lameko Eskrima mixed with Kinkojiku Karate and Namido Jiu-Jitsu. You're teaching us this stuff. You show us, okay, this is Jujigatami. So this is your armbar. This is how you set it up. Here's four or five different variations. You're teaching us, okay, well, here's your boxing 6 count. You've got 6 different punches right here. Everything else can just be considered a variation of such. And then you're showing us these different Thai combos and these different empty hand combos from Lameko. Why aren't you doing as much of this? And my answer every time to them has been because that's not what I make work. As a martial artist, I'm a really big believer in the analogy of a toolbox. So I know that you're a British guy who lives in a fairly large area, so you guys go a lot of places and you can get stuff that you need and all that. But you know for a fact that I live pretty much away from civilization for the most part.
Yes.
If we have something broke, we fix it. So we have a toolbox. Okay.
I have one right
If
next
you
to
have a
me. I will
toolbox-
send you a picture if you don't believe me.
Okay, so just bear with me. If you have a toolbox, you'll have specific items in it that you want to use. A hammer is not going to be used to fix every little thing. Neither is a Phillips head screwdriver.
You mean Wreck-It Ralph lied to me?
Yes, Wreck-It Ralph lied to you, but he used to.
Sadness.
That's fair. Anyways, so in your toolbox, you're going to put the items that you're more likely to use. That doesn't mean that you don't learn about the other tools. So when I'm sitting here training my students, I'll teach them, okay, here's orthodox things, and here's some of the tips and tricks that I've done. Like one of the more unorthodox things that I do is called Hiki-Suki, pulling punch. All Hiki-Suki is you clench up and you do like almost like you're doing a minor bongsao on their arm, but when they go to retract, you just follow it with almost like you're throwing a Samisuki, so like a jab. But the way it works is as soon as you throw that jab, you hook back with a fuksao. So they go to pull against it, and then you launch your hand back in. So you're just throwing punch after punch after punch, but it's with the same arm. That seems very unorthodox to these people who have trained boxing, Thai, just standard kickboxing, anything else. Even karate guys don't do it a lot. But I like it. Why? Because no one else does it. Another example would be like a Yamasuki. You have a lot of these karate guys who want to throw Yamasuki just because they do it in kata. But then they go to apply it in sparring and they can't apply it. How do I do it? I modified it slightly. Instead of being thrown with an arc on both arms, I throw almost like I'm throwing a vertical to like the liver or the spleen area, but I throw like an overhand left or an overhand right to assist me. So it's a double punch. The reason I'm throwing this is I'm wanting that body shot to land first, and then I'm wanting to collapse the jaw, hook around so I can get the throw. Just as much unorthodox things as I can apply. If I see that my opponent is in a left side lead, instead of mirroring them and getting in my left side lead, I'm going to get in a right side lead. Why? Because more often than not, you'll see people who want to be in opposite sides just so they're kind of facing in the same orientation. If you go to mirror them, meaning that you have it switched where, 1 second. All right, I'm back. Someone just like completely made me lose my train of thought. What was the last thing I said, Luca?
You were explaining some type of how you altered some type of move from some kata, I believe.
Oh, we were talking about stances. So if people are used to sitting here fighting and one guy being in their left lead and the other guy being in their left lead, I just fight right side forward if they're left side forward. I fight left side forward if they're right side forward. I just switch it up on them because it makes me look different than anybody else that they've thought before. My ideology between fighting is fight to their weaknesses. A lot of people want to sit here and say, you need to sit here and focus on your strengths, which that's fair. If you're really, really, really good at Tsutemi Waza, then focus on Tsutemi Waza. If you're really, really good at Tewaza, focus on Tewaza. I don't see a problem with that if you're just a competitor. I like screwing with everybody. If I know that I'm fighting someone who is extremely good at striking, I'm going to grapple with them. If I'm fighting someone who I know is really good at grappling, I'm going to strike with them because I'm considered proficient enough in both to screw with whoever's not proficient in that area. I just like doing things that put people out of their comfort zone. When I'm fighting, I'll do a lot of standard boxing mixed with some tuken, so mani mano. I'll use a lot of the open-handed stuff that looks extremely similar to Jeet Kune Do or Wing Chun just to parry over because it sets up your standard boxing. I use standard boxing to set up when more Okinawan strikes. Be it a break your stun, be it just parrying over so I can just shoot the uke, be it just throwing nukite to the jaw, whatever else I want to throw it to. Open-handed striking. It's whatever I really want to do in the moment. You want to be as unorthodox as possible.
That's a very interesting way of going about it. I think that's kind of similar to the idea of drunken fist boxing. The whole like you're throwing them off and you're like using things that they aren't going to expect or understand, so that they can't predict the way you're coming. It's also similar to a concept we have in Shorinji, which I don't actually use in my own personal fighting, but it's used in the traditional form, where we have a fully vertical lead hand for striking, which is on the lower half of our body. So the point is you can only see the front of it and you can't see which angle it's coming at to see which hit is coming towards you. Going into my personal style of fighting, I'd say the majority of the way I attack at the moment is coming from training in Shorinji Kempo, but the rules, the way I set out my attacks, a lot of it comes from the maxims of Wing Chun and my understanding of different martial arts outside of Shorinji Kempo. So I used to prioritize on 3 of the 25 maxims. Retain what comes in, send off what retreats, and rush in on loss of contact. That's the basic concept of blitzing, is that you're super aggressive and you rush in so that they don't get a chance to counter you getting your hits. Make the first move to have control and attack according to timing. So you make sure you get those first hits in and you're the first one to hit. Therefore, hopefully you don't have to start countering and blocking too much and you can keep control throughout it. And then charge into the opponent and execute 3 moves together. Same thing as blitzing. One thing I've come to understand more over the past couple of years is the yin-yang principle should be fully understood. So the yin-yang principle, yin is the softness, and where there's softness, you need to apply your strength to do the most damage towards them. But also you need to have your own softness for when they have yang. Yang is the strength, and yang is the hard attacks, aggressive hits, things like that. And you need to have yin, your deflections, your grappling, soft. It's like Goju in Japanese in karate styles in Kempo. We have Goho and Juho in Kempo. Goho is our striking and Juho is our grappling. And we have all our Juho is softer techniques. It's locks, it's escapes. Goho is kicks, punches, and blocks. and then it blends together, so you get styles like Goju-Ryu, hard soft style, you know. So you need to understand using both and where to apply them. As for how you see me fight, I fight in southpaw. That's a weird choice for me because I have more flexibility in my left leg as a front leg for kicking, but I prioritize my arms over um over my legs in terms of fighting. And notice that I say arms because I don't punch as much. I know punching is like obviously super useful, but palm strikes I find hit harder and do less of a chance of messing you up, break heel stuns, or just strikes with your forearm as a whole. Back fists, even though it's technically a fist, I don't count it as a punch. Most people don't. And elbows. I prefer in close fighting, and for a lot of it, I find that your palm, your back of your fist, your hammer fist, your forearm, especially your forearm, is a very underrated tool in a lot of martial arts. They're really useful tools. So you'll see me when I'm fighting that my priority is to get in close and apply that a lot. Getting in close is an issue because I'm fighting a lot of people in sparring that are a lot taller than me and like to kick, and they can kick better than I can. So one thing I've had to do is learn a lot more diagonal and angular footwork where you're weaving in and out, and you have to like get your distance where you're out just enough that the kick doesn't land, but not too far that you can't get in that distance before to get another kick coming. One thing I've learned is that if they like to kick, they're probably going to throw a round kick, and that'll be your opportunity to get the side or the back, and then you can throw some good hits in. And once you're in that distance, try and keep that distance and try and control that distance, whether that be for you grappling, clinching, or just flurrying strikes.
You know, another point that kind of sounds counterintuitive is something that I've been telling a lot of my guys is don't actually attack when they're on the defense. More so try to time it to meet their force with a softer force to go around it.
That's the concept of Aiki, basically.
Yeah.
So like if you see that your opponent's wanting to, close themselves off and they're wanting to just defend for a bit, I mean, what do? Obviously, you're just going to sit there, and a lot of people just sit here and they just start pounding, pounding, pounding. You're playing into their game. They want you to attack, therefore they're defending. Instead, go on the defense as well. It may be a little bit slower, not as fast paced, but you have a moment to catch your breath. And eventually they're going to get bored or just they can't wait any longer. So they go to attack on you. And whenever people are being active, that's when they make mistakes.
I see
They're
your
on the
point there, but
offense.
I'm not the biggest fan of the idea of waiting for an opportunity. I prefer creating your own opportunity. So if they're
No, you
on the
can create
defensive, making your opening is the perfect thing for that.
you can create your own opportunity with this. What I'm saying is if you see they're defending, don't sit there and try to one and done. You're trying to attack through their defense. Instead, lead with
You muted? You cut out there, buddy?
Yeah, I guess loading more or less cut out there.
Those gone.
I will say that I kind of do agree with what you were saying. Though. I mean, even coming from an art where everything kind of has to be fast paced, like Sanda matches, typically speaking, go by fairly fast. Like each round, I'm pretty sure is 3 minutes, and within those 3 minutes, the crowd's expecting a lot of action, and you can't necessarily grapple for more than a couple of seconds. So everything is fast paced. But with that being said, though, like just thinking about it, and just what we've been doing for the most part, being the first to go on the offensive is something both sides usually typically go for. If you can, like maybe not.
I don't agree with that at all. I have rarely ever seen a fight where both sides would go in the offensive. I've seen a handful of fights where one person will go fully offensive. The majority of fights I've seen, people are slow and waiting it out and throwing things to sort of judge each other and get something before they go on offensive.
All right. So what I was trying to, I got called away for a moment. It's not really waiting for an opening. You can create your own opening, but not attacking while they are wanting to defend. So you're not playing into their game plan to the point where, hey, they're wanting you to attack on them. Instead, of just sitting there trying to punch through it, you may throw, like what you were talking about earlier, a feint to get them to react upon it. And then your reaction is upon their reaction, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
But you also have ways of creating your opening that aren't attacking so much. Like that's one thing people don't realize. So my problem with being on the defensive is that you let yourself get backed up, and if your intention is to try and block and react, then you're relying on being faster than them or them not seeing it coming. If they know you're on the defensive, they can just remove your defense or control it. And fading is a way to control the defense or hitting the defense, like that technique we've talked about a bit that you mentioned earlier, where you like hit the guard and then pull back and they go to move and then you just push it forward with the same arm rather than like the hook into the straight lead. But there's stuff like if someone's in a guard, you have your lap style. You literally have you roll the hand over and you pull down with straight punch, or you have sweeps, or you have like body shots or uppercuts. It depends on what guard they're using. There's ways around it where you can move or control where their guard is without going into their defense specifically. And if they do try and continually do their defense, there's got to be a moment where they try to counter or try to go on the offense. Otherwise, they're just going to be eating your hips. And if you're already on the offense, it's a lot harder for them to get their offense out.
I don't know. I feel like it could go. I don't know. I've, but personally speaking, fighting a lot from the outside and things like that. I mean, being defensive doesn't necessarily mean you're losing ground in a sense. You can be defensive and still continue to more or less hold your position and things like that. It just really comes down to, do you, is your reaction time good enough? Do you have the confidence to, react in time and do what needs to be done when when that strike is thrown? But if you're good with timing and good with distance, kind of like with the previous recording we had here, then there's not too many issues to worry about, going on the defensive other than more or less waiting down the time clock, especially in the art where you might have points and full contact, kind of like with Sanda. We do still have a point system where that other guy has more points on you. Then you might want to try and, go off the defensive, go more into like neutral or offensive, just try and, even that score out. But if you're ahead and, they're on the losing end, there's no problem with more or less just, waiting for them to fuck themselves over, essentially.
Or you wait until you fuck yourself over. That's something like if you're waiting for your opportunity to get your hit in. You're also giving them the opportunity to see how to get their hit on you. You're not just giving yourself time if you're trying to wait out on them.
That also goes hand in hand with something we call a Namido attack by drawing. Attacking by drawing is to actually defend against something. As soon as they go to attack, you're attacking through it. Because you are more receptive to it because you see it coming. They are sitting there giving their whole self to that strike. You're going to counteract off of it without blocking, but by attacking instead.
Well, counterattack is something I'd say somewhat different than being defensive, though. I'd put them in a different area.
I think it would still be a conversation.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't much like waiting to counterattack. I made this because I don't. I have experience with more aggressive fighters. In Kempo, we do a thing when we're sparring where we'll put different categories on the time. So we'll have time for attack, one person defend, and then we'll go into free fighting. But it's if even then you'll have some people they don't want to attack. So it'd be like defenders, if the attacker's not attacking, then just get your hit on them. But as a general rule, we get experience with people coming at us, and as a general thing, defending is a lot harder, and it doesn't matter really what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess in a sense it can be. Yeah, I've just seen it go pretty well in terms of obviously not just fucking sitting there. There shouldn't be too many instances where you are literally just sitting within one position. But as long as you're up moving, maybe still giving. Think if you want to wait for them to throw a shot just so you can move off step off center for a counter, then yeah, that's something you do quite often. That's more so what I mean in terms of like the defensive, kind of like what Logan was saying with those, drawing attacks. It's more so just waiting for them to fuck themselves over in a sense, or waiting for that moment where they're slightly tired, or maybe they you gave them a shot you didn't realize was quite as hard as it was, or just trying to give yourself a little bit more fucking time to just catch your breath if it's been a good while.
Well, let's look at look at Anderson Silva and Tony Ferguson. Yeah, Anderson, they both implemented Munchin techniques into their MMA fighting. When Anderson Silva implemented it, he used it in a defensive sense, and he kept trying to use Tansao and Paksao to defend the strikes that were coming in until he got backed into a wall, and he ended up losing that fight by 2 points in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony used it, and he used his normal striking, and he backed someone. He blitzed them, backed them into a wall, and then when they put up their defense, he lapsed it down their guard and swung his elbow over to take them in the head. So what I'm saying is, like, if you're waiting and you're trying to use it in the defensive, then you can't really hold your ground and not be backed up unless you start counterattacking, which works, but I don't think you should rely on it as a strategy. If you're counterattacking, it should be because your attacking didn't go well and they out attacked you, so now you need to get your counter in, and you counter punch or you deflect and punch simultaneously. You don't block and then punch. You're blocking and hitting them, or blocking and kicking them roughly the same time to try and get the right hit in and take out their defense so you can continue on your attack.
I don't necessarily disagree. That being said, I still think there's something to be said for maybe not taking it completely from the leg. As long as you're still getting your footwork in there, you're still circling, you're still feeling it, you might need to slip a couple shots just to get in there to land what you've been looking to land, or hey, this person tends to, throw a very fucking let me think. Oh, this person's very fucking dominant on the idea of using their roundhouse and shit like that. Obviously don't just bring your hands down every time they fucking come up for a strike, expecting it to be the roundhouse. But if hey, this is how this guy operates, this is what he's really good and known for, is always throwing that kick in there. And there, I don't really see too much of a problem circling around, jabbing them up.
Okay, let me ask you then. What would you rather do? Would you rather wait for them to throw it and then try and defend or move out the way and move in on it? Or would you rather be in close attacking so that when they try and throw the roundhouse, you can already stump them?
I mean, if I have the ability to just completely overwhelm them, then chances are I wouldn't need to be on the defensive in the first place.
But it's not about completely overwhelming them. The point is that whether you're waiting and taking the attack and then trying to defend and counter it, or whether you're attacking yourself and you can already be in that position where you're not. It's like an object in motion continues its motion. Have you ever been on a long run and then you stop for a minute and try and continue your run? It's not the same thing. In martial arts, you continue your momentum still. You keep that energy and that flow going. Your body's always turning, always moving.
I was gonna say, you're never I don't know about karate, but you're never stopping moving. Like, even on a defensive, just 1 second, Logan. Even on a defensive spree, you're still circling, your footwork's still there, you're still giving a little bit of a bounce there, you're still focused on your body, is still in it.
Yeah, but if you're not attacking or bringing things down or trying to throw or rotate, you don't have that hikite, you don't have that hip going, you don't have your arms out coming in that sort of you may be moving your feet and you're like weaving, but your hands are up, you're blocking, you're defending, and if you're like static defending, and if you're static defending, then you're relying on your body movement and taking the hits. And if you're actively blocking or parrying, you're relying on going from static defending and moving your arm or leg out in time to catch and move.
Yeah, I guess you're
That's
right,
why your
Ryan.
defense should
There's
always
also
be
the
part of your offense. You should be moving in and defending as things come in to land your attacks that were already going on.
I guess I agree to disagree with this consent. I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like maybe having a visual example aids it a little bit more.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, so let's let Logan get his last thoughts in what he was saying.
My whole thing was energy cannot be destroyed; it can only be transferred. That's all I was gonna say.
That's fair.
Like, yeah, no, like, well, we got
Beast
out
King
there
over
last
here.
time.
I know Beast
No.
King over here is the big sciencey guy, so
Yeah,
his terms.
I do love that term. Yeah.
Okay. We've got 5 minutes, so any like quick last thoughts on this topic?
Uh, hmm.
I got something.
Yeah.
Every individual is different. Okay, just do what you guys can make work. If you can
Yeah.
make something work that we can't, go for it. But don't be sitting there trying to tell other people this is the only way. You can see things that are really easy for the majority of the population, and then you can see certain individuals who can make certain things work that you can't make work. That's fine and dandy. You're always going to have your differences between yourself and others. Do what you like, do what you can make work, do what you can make functional. Remember, guys, anytime you're trying to make something functional, you need resistance. As long as you can do it to a resisting opponent, then it works.
That reminds me, last thing, one of my favorite quotes that I heard from Doug Makaido. If you have two fighters and both fighters are doing the simple thing the best way, the person who's going to win is the person who's taken the most complicated thing and made it simple for them.
Yeah.
My
I
simple
will
is better
say
than your simple.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. I will say this though.
You know what your first couple lessons in Lameko are, right?
Don't get stabbed, don't get stabbed, and don't get stabbed.
No, think about it. I've shown you the Lameko 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
1 and 4. Forehand, backhand.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all you throw. Your reasoning for this, if you can evade that, you can evade pretty much anything. You learn how to counter off of those strikes.
Sounds
Can't
about
remember
right.
some of Punagoro's original students. They went to a Eskrima tournament, so they show up and they're stick fighting, right?
Mhm.
He had several of his first generation students who were beating instructors of systems just because they only did 1 and 4.
It's like that manga about that guy who just got really good at the 1-2.
Oh yeah, the guy who got really good at the jab cross.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have time to get into that.
I will
Anyways.
say this though, just one last thing. Like, as much as you might emulate and admire your instructors, always remember you are your own individual. You do not have to be a carbon copy image of your Sifu or your instructors. You're your own individual, and chances are trying to imitate them more or less just going to either get you hurt or just not really have you progress.
So when do you want to sign us up this time?
All right, guys, this has been Luca, Lo, and Beast King from Combat Connections. Do you have anything in the comments that you would like us to do next? If you have anything you'd like to see next, just leave it in the comments. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That's all I can get out. I'm deathly tired, guys. I'm sorry.